you want to hop in, Marcia? So I'm waiting for another blabber to hop in the open seat there. If anyone wants to, um, if anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to take an open seat. Hi there, Marcia. How are you?
Or afternoon. Feels like morning to me. Wow. You too.
Good to see you. And thanks for being on this blab. So I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One is I'm actually taking a mindfulness course that is training how to specifically work with teaching mindfulness to K through 12 in schools.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so what I love about this program already, it's just the first week, is that they have the theoretical components that you read, but the homework is to talk about what mindfulness is as much as you can to other people.
Okay. Yeah.
So the assignment was, have a discussion with someone, explain what mindfulness is, outside of using a specific definition, just what does it mean, help someone understand what it is through your own experience. So I wanted to do that, but I figured, oh, cool, we could do it on Blab where it's not just me talking one way to someone. We could actually have a discussion.
What a great idea. I think the connection is a little shoddy, so there's a little bit of a delay for me.
Oh, okay. I'll be mindful of that. You're totally clear and on point on my end. So.
Okay, good.
So I'd love to just share with you the definition from John Kabat-Zinn, who was the big Western purveyor of mindfulness, especially in the more secular realm, bringing it into psychology courses and studies, and then we can go from there. But his definition is mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. And I distill that down to my experience of mindfulness is paying attention to everything in the moment, paying attention to those things in our interior conversation and dialogue in our mind that we may be saying about ourselves or another person. It's paying attention to the feelings that we have in our body, the feelings that we might have in our emotions. And in particular, mindfulness practices to me are about sitting with anything and just basically staying in the space. There's always, seems to me, a conversation between mindfulness and meditation. Are they the same thing? Are they one and the same? I think ultimately they are. Meditation tends to be spoken of more in spiritual circles, I think. But when I meditate, when I'm practicing mindfulness, I am welcoming into my experience everything, whether I like it or not, and still staying present. So just to give an example, as I was talking to you and trying to explain in my own words what I thought mindfulness is, I immediately noticed some judgments coming up. And instead of stopping my explanation, I stayed in the flow and present to the fact that we're on this blab together. And, it has since kind of fallen away, and I'm taking a breath and letting it go. But to me, that's at its base what mindfulness is willing to be present to whatever comes comes to pass. What does mindfulness
That's
mean to
beautiful.
you?
Thank you for sharing. I love hearing. It's why I jumped on, because I was curious to hear what you were going to say about it. Because
Yeah.
mindfulness is really interesting to me, and it's something that I've been working with a lot, specifically because I'm in a DBT group, which is a mindfulness based therapy group, and I really appreciate the work of mindfulness. And so, for what it means to me, is very similar, but my words would be just giving my attention to, like, the what is. So just giving whatever attention I have, whatever quality that I'm able to provide in the moment. Sometimes I have more attention available than others. And just becoming aware,
Yeah.
being willing to look and see and feel what is there in the inner and outer landscape. But for me, it seems also to be more mindful to my inner landscape, because I can tend to be pretty aware of what's going on outside of me, but maybe not so aware of what's going on inside of me. And so, yeah, I
Okay.
think pretty simply awareness is what I would use to describe mindfulness.
Okay. And if you're willing to just continue to share your experience, help define when you say inner landscape. Like, I think I know
Yeah.
what that means, but if someone was to be listening to this recording later, what do you mean by inner landscape?
I would say the thoughts I'm having, the feelings I'm having, the sensations, very much what you said, that I'm having in my experience that maybe um, might not be perceived by another person. Like, you can't tell what I'm thinking or feeling or the sensations I'm having, because it's such an intimate experience I'm having with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
Cool.
I would say.
I okay. It is it is really, to me, a very challenging thing um, today to be in the inner landscape, which I think is why I initially started doing any sort of meditation or mindfulness practices, is recognizing in my own life my inability to focus, to be a little bit of like caught in the ooh shiny syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because my personality I go outside of myself often, as someone who likes to take care of others or to support others in their endeavors. I found it really difficult for me to give any attention to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And not in that selfish way, but just like, what is it that I really like? What is it that I really don't like? What tastes good? What doesn't taste good? What feels
Yeah.
good? What doesn't feel good? What makes me angry? What doesn't make it? Like, what is my threshold of
Yeah.
whatever? And the thing that I love about meditation and about mindfulness practices, or a sitting mindfulness practice, is it most people that I talk to have the complete opposite idea and notion of what it means to sit in mindfulness or sit in meditation. Most people think that it's about zeroing out their thoughts and not
Mm-hmm.
feeling anything at all. And when people step into or attempt to engage in that practice, even if they're seasoned, if they still have that belief of that's what it should be, they're almost immediately
Mm-hmm.
disappointed. Um, and so, it's one of the ways that I really appreciate as I'm continuing to study more and just get more language and articulation of
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness in particular under my belt, is that, it is to go back to Kabat-Zinn's very direct, is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So it's not about not having anything, it's paying attention to everything, but non-judgmentally, and allowing it to come and go and just witness it. And I feel if more people wanting to engage in meditation or mindfulness practices really took that to heart it would be a lot easier actually to sit in a practice, as opposed to going, oh, I can't do this because I can't stop thinking about my kids, or I can't stop thinking about work, or I can't stop thinking about that asshole that cut me off on the highway, or whatever it might be. So that's one of the biggest gifts I think that I have found being a practitioner of meditation for almost 15 years, in particular with mindfulness, is that allowance of anything and sitting with it. You know?
Definitely. I like what you said, and noticing the difference, particularly paying attention that mindfulness is with that quality of non-judgment. I sometimes struggle with non-judgment, or just that whole concept. And for me, if it's easier for me to focus on acceptance, it's essentially the same thing, but my mind just can wrap an idea, an image around acceptance easier than I can wrap my head around non-judgmental. Essentially the same thing. Sure. It's just the picture in my head is easier to go, oh, accepting means a hug. Non-judgmental it's just, it feels like I'm doing too much in my head to try to align with it. So I really like to, in a very similar vein, for me, mindfulness works best when coupled with acceptance. So accepting whatever experience I'm having, whatever feeling I'm having, whatever judgment I'm having, whatever thought I'm having, whatever sensation I'm having, that mindfulness without it can be painful. Awareness can be painful in general. It can be pleasurable. It can be a whole slew of things. But I find when I can cultivate and develop an idea or concept of acceptance, just in general, and then acceptance for myself, then giving my attention to something doesn't feel as painful. It feels like acceptance is the container in which I'm giving my attention to.
I really love that, because I just had a spiritual direction counseling session with someone today, and one of the things that we talked about was recognizing how present judgment just always is. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We are always judging. That's green, that's blue, they're black, they're white. Whatever our beauty dynamic may be, we say that person's ugly, that person's not. We're constantly judging. But to accept that judgment, especially in the areas where it feels icky, and still go, all right, I'm judged like crazy right now. I'm going to sit here and appreciate, life anyway. I really love, thank you for that idea of acceptance being the container through which all of that sits in.
I think for me, it's just helped me to back up and be like, well, maybe I don't need to look at mindfulness or awareness first. Maybe my first step is to cultivate an idea of what acceptance is and practice acceptance, and then, gently practice mindfulness. I'm always looking at process and what's the best way to learn something or help somebody with something. And so, as I really sit with this idea of acceptance, radical acceptance, what does it mean to accept myself in every moment? What does it mean to accept every situation or anything that's ever happening? And then from there, it's easier for me to want to give my attention and to be mindful about myself and others, because I know it's not coming from a place of rejection, but it's coming from a place of acceptance. Thanks.
That's awesome.
I love this topic. I've been with it for a while, so it's fun to be able to talk to you about it. So I was very curious to hear what you have to say. When you say, what does the non-judgmental side mean to you? I'm curious as to how you would articulate that and how I've worked with that.
Yeah. Well, I guess to me, what always sits right next to the word or the idea of being non-judgmental is compassion. To me, it's just another way, a very specific tone or color to acceptance. And the reason why I like that word is that implied in it for me, which I think is what you were saying with the word acceptance, implied in compassion is the acknowledgement that something is being forgiven or released, right? So if we are compassionate, I'm compassionate that they're being a complete jerk. I'm still saying
Right.
they're a jerk, but I'm choosing to be something other than a complete jerk back to them because they made me upset. So compassion is a big word that lives in the same place on the page with non-judgmentally. So, again, to look at the definition, to even use, I'll read it twice. I'll read it once with acceptance and once with compassion, and it probably it'll be the same thing, but it'll feel differently to both of us. So to say mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment, with complete acceptance. Or mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment with total compassion. So that's how I kind of, I guess, sit with the idea of non-judgment. It's such a powerful, mindfulness to me is the elixir of hate. It's like the elixir of war. It could be the elixir of hate crimes. It can be the elixir of self-harm and in those moments where we choose, I believe anger is a good thing, but in those moments where we may experience anger against ourselves or another, and then it pushes us to the space of acting out in a way that's harmful, if the world, and all we can do is start with ourselves, so that's why I'm meditating, but if the world could learn a mindful practice, then what would the debates be like right now? What would all of the rallies that Donald Trump has had, where all these shenanigans and things went down, if people were more mindful, if he was more mindful, if the security guards were more mindful, if even the protesters that went there to shake things up were more mindful, like, it'd be a completely different experience. There would still be difference of opinion. There'd still be, there would still be difference, but I think we could all sit with one another a little differently. So,
yeah. How do you, what are some of mindfulness practices that you like or use?
Sure. Funny you should ask. And just kind of like set up, here comes a commercial.
Anytime.
Thanks. So right now I am re-engaging, one, because I'm taking a class on mindfulness. I'm re-engaging with practice in a little bit of a different way, in being a student as opposed to a teacher, which is, I think, to Zen mind, beginner's mind, like that, to use that phrase. But the ones that I like to use, or the ones that I like to teach, I'm actually in the process of rediscovering that right now, doing a program that's called Build a Habit of Meditation in 49 Days. And every single day, the people that sign up for the program, we're doing a different type of meditation. Some of them are very similar, but each day has a slightly different focus. And to distill down that definition of mindfulness into, well, then what is the practice of mindfulness?
Oops.
You're right.
Computer just something dropped.
Mindfulness practices can look like a lot of different things, but it's ultimately actually focusing our attention in a very specific place, area, thought. So, one of the most basic ones, which I really love and I incorporate in any meditation I do, is the mindful practice of just following the breath in and out.
Yeah.
And the first one that we did yesterday was a 5-minute meditation of just simply breathing in And breathing out. And just like following the breath completely, like exhaling to the point to where you're almost pushing air out of your, like you're pushing up on your stomach and your
Mm-hmm.
diaphragm, and you're squeezing all the air out of your lungs to the point where you have to like take another another deep breath in, but like you can't be more present. Like if you're pushing air out to the point where you have to gasp for air, like you're not thinking about anything
Mm-hmm.
else, focusing on something very specific. So that's one of my most simple
Mm-hmm.
one. Um, and then, like, so this week we did the breath, and then today was a body scan. So it was breathing, but just like being aware, like focusing on your feet, not necessarily trying to change anything about our feet, but
Mm-hmm.
moving up to our legs and our hips and our thighs and our back and our chest and our neck and our shoulders and our ears and our forehead muscles and our, like just
Mm-hmm.
being, just becoming aware of what's there. One of the fun meditations that I always like to do, and this is, I think it's a fun, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Icebreaker, almost, for anyone who's never done mindfulness practices before, because it takes away a little bit of the reverence. Like it's not about a monk, although I'm bald headed. It's not about a monk.
That was good.
I like to call it and so I'm about to go somewhere that's not appropriate at all, but I'm going.
See?
So I call it chocolate mindfulness, and I'm like, okay,
Love it. I love it.
it's not about me being proud. Um, it's taking a singular piece of chocolate,
Mm-hmm.
and I did this with a group where I bought some Ghirardelli uh, chocolate drops like you'd use to make chocolate chip cookies, and everyone just got one, and then placing it in the mouth, and then you're not chewing, you're just allowing it to
Dissolve.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
dissolve. And people love it because it's chocolate. But then I remember this one woman at the end of this workshop said, "Oh my God, normally when I eat chocolate, I want to eat it until it's gone." And I like placed the bag on a table in the room where I was teaching. And she's like, "I have no desire to eat any more chocolate." Like the time that it took to experience that one piece of chocolate was like, she said it was actually pretty intense in an awesome way. And I'm like completely content. And she said it's gone out of my mouth and I'm still like, getting a little bit of bitter, and then the bitter fades away and I can taste the sweetness. And then there's that like cocoa. That's one of my favorite kind of fun ones
That
to do.
reminds me, I was on a road trip and I was pontificating about how much I love my mindfulness group. and
Mhm.
and was sharing a similar exercise. I was like, well, we could just like, and we had Reese's peanut butter cup. So we all just took a mini one. There was like three of us in the car. We all took one and we just like slowly, mindfully ate it. We all were like, these are really gross. Like all of us. It was so funny. Like all three of us were like, wow, I love these and these are gross.
They don't taste like peanut butter at
Yeah,
all.
exactly. They had like waxy taste and this like really
Yeah.
weird. I was like, wow, I like them when I'm not mindful. I don't like them when I'm mindful. Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
What would you say to someone, Marcia, if someone said to you, "I don't, I can't be mindful," or "I don't think I can be mindful"?
hmm.
What would you say to that? Do you think it's true or not?
What was that last part? Or cut out? Would I what?
Do if someone was to make that statement to you, what would you say to them? And most importantly, do you think everyone can be mindful?
I would probably just return and ask a question. I'd be curious to find out what they think mindfulness is. Um, because I would
Mhm.
say just to say that I'm not mindful is a mindfulness statement. Like you have to have some kind of quality of awareness to call yourself not able to practice mindfulness. Um, So so that's probably what I would do. I'd probably be like, what's your definition? I'd ask what your definition of mindfulness is, and then I'd probably just simplify and redirect, because my experience is everyone can. I don't believe anybody can't be mindful. We all have, consciousness is always aware of itself to some degree or another. It's just a matter of us tuning into that, and we're conscious beings. So it's enacting and utilizing that consciousness that lives within us, and just choosing to pay attention. We all have,
Sure.
there's this one statement I love that I learned at the School of Metaphysics, and it was, our greatest commodity is our attention. And so we're always giving it to something. It's just, what are we giving it to? Are we giving it to, the TV, to numbing out? I mean, even we give our attention away all the time. And so it's just, I think if anything, it's taking back our attention. It's quite empowering to practice mindfulness, because it's like, I'm taking my attention and I'm putting it where I want it, regardless of what is coming at me from the world, or even in my own internal world, where like a part of me wants to go here and focus on this maybe painful thing, and another part of me is like, let's just sit with it and not focus on any one thing. Let's just be aware of all things. So
yeah, that's beautiful to think of it as a practice of empowerment. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Shocking. I don't even know what's in me. So thank you for that question. I was like, oh, that was really good.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. Powerful one. I would love to just do a couple of like a minute of a mindfulness breathing practice in a second, but are there any other practices? You mentioned that you were in a group that's based around mindfulness. Are there any practices that you've experienced in that group, or that you have done out on your own, that you particularly like, that you find empowering?
Great question. There are so many. There's so many. I think really it's I think just me asking it's a quality of attention, really, for me. Like, I try to practice all day long. It's not just sitting down and practicing for 10 minutes for me, or a meditation, although those are great places to start. I really like worksheets, or, I like this group. I keep going to this group, even though the material isn't new for me at this point. I just go because it keeps me in the practice.
Sure.
And so I like having some exercise that I'm working with, and then we focus on it for the week. This week it's about improving the moment, and so just taking an experience of checking in and asking myself, where is my attention, and if it's on something that feels like painful or a lower vibration, then incorporating a different skill to improve the moment, whether it be prayer or or an affirmation, or doing something else. That's a little bit of a side tangent than mindfulness, but it all starts with mindfulness, like just being willing to give myself attention. So this actually reminds me, one that I do like to do that's really simple and really easy to use is just to like set my timer on my phone for like 3 different times throughout the day, and say, take a moment and notice, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, and what am I experiencing? And just for a moment, pause for like 30 seconds and just check in.
Yeah.
So that's a very simple one that I like to do. That helps me just get in there and get related, because it can be really it can be really easy to think that mindfulness only happens when we're meditating or when we're setting aside time to practice, but mindfulness can actually happen all day long. And I think that's the misconception about it. I mean, you were kind of hinting at that earlier. You weren't saying that, but I've seen that out in the world.
Yeah. Well, that's such a great point, because I always tend to focus on the actual practice of meditation or doing mindfulness practices formally. And, in teaching, it always comes out that the purpose of that meditation or the purpose of that focused mindfulness practice is not about getting away from everything. It's like, just like, if you're wanting to become a better batter in baseball or softball, you go to the batting cages. It's like a very specific time to like work this muscle in a certain motion over and over again, so that when you go out into the game, you will have practiced and had some sort of strengthening and coordination happen. I guess I recognize that's a blind spot for me to think about in talking about this, that it's not just about formal sitting practice. It's about being mindful all the time. But those formal sitting times are like going to the batting cage, of where you're specifically creating a container to be in in
it's
that
important.
practice.
I so appreciate what you're saying. No, it's important to have dedicated. Oh, sorry. Am I cutting you off? I thought there was a space.
Well, I was going to say, just with the intention, with the intention that whether you set an alarm on your phone, which I'm going to start doing. Thank you for that little practice. Whether you're doing that on your phone, or if you just, like I notice now, as after 15 years of practice, that just throughout the day, I will randomly just have like, I kind of like, I just have a noticing, what's going on in inside of me, or I notice like, wow, they're being really reactive. And then I take a notice of like, and I'm totally being a jerk inside my head right now. And I just kind of go, okay. Isn't that interesting? But then I'm, I continue to sit in that awareness and move into my day. I was just yesterday at a meeting that I had to go to that I knew was going to be a little challenging, just in terms of personalities and some of the content of what we needed to discuss. And as I was getting out of my car before I went into the building, I just was in a really great awareness of like I was feeling anxious. I was feeling really uncertain about being there. I was feeling fearful, not like threatened for my life, but just, the general sensation of like fear, and doubt. And, I said, oh, okay. So those are present, but I don't want them to run the show. And, I don't think there's any way that I could have stepped into that meeting. And it ended up, it was still uncomfortable. It had its moments of highs and lows, but being able to sit in that uncomfortable meeting and uncertainty of that meeting, I don't know if I would have been able to handle it as well, even 5 years ago, had it not been for this like regular practice in my life of more formal practice, so that it becomes like one of the defaults of how I show up in the world.
Yeah, so. I love it. I've got a little echo. What I was going to say when I thought there was a space, I apologize, was these formal practices are important because that's how you build the muscle. It's how you and it's important to sit down and have spaces to practice, because if you're trying to like do a bunch of different stuff and you don't ever sit down to practice, you don't have the benefits of what a practice can look like. And then, but I've also found for myself that if I don't make that practicing over time definitely will have benefits and it will seep into the rest of my life. But I don't have to wait for the benefits to seep into my life. I can actually apply them throughout the day. And I think that's really crucial for me. And I think it's really important to have our moments of practice, but also take those moments and apply them throughout the day. How can I, and like you said, you showed up in this meeting differently because you had a quality of noticing about yourself that you hadn't had before, which is a direct benefit of meditation, a direct benefit of, and I've noticed for myself, by paying attention more frequently throughout the day, I'm able to stay more present with myself. I'm able to say what's occurring for me more in the moment and have more authentic communication for me, because I can struggle holding too much of myself in. And so for me, it's helped me say, oh, well, this is what I'm feeling, because I've been checking in throughout the day. What am I feeling? So it doesn't come as a surprise to me or anyone else. So
yeah. Cool. Well, so I'm gonna change. Yeah. Thank you for being in this discussion with me, because it's causing me to just shift my personal definition in the moment right now of what mindfulness is. And mindfulness is the willingness to accept everything and anything that is in the present moment, inside or outside of me, whether it's my internal thoughts and emotions, or if it's a situation, condition, or person in front of me. And I would love to just do a couple of minutes of breathing in that definition, just accepting what is right now, and then we can get on to the rest of our afternoon.
Great.
Cool. So for anyone that may listen to this recording later, we just welcome our eyes to fall closed, not to fall asleep. But as Marcia mentioned earlier, that idea of the inner landscape. So as we close our eyes to seeing what's happening in the outer world, we can become a little bit more present to our inner world, in our feelings, in our emotions, sensations in our body. And our goal for the next, let's say, 5 breaths is just to breathe intentionally in and out and be with whatever's there. So let's breathe in and out. And in and out. In again. For a 4th time. And one last deep breath in and out together. And out.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for the convo and the dialogue.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, we'll have to have another little mid-afternoon blabathon about mindfulness.
Yeah, I would love it. Thanks so much, sweetheart. Enjoy your day. Mwah.
You too. Mwah. Bye.